Rick Harrison, a beloved TV personality and the face of Pawn Stars, found himself at the center of an unexpected and dramatic turn of events. Today, the courtroom, usually calm and orderly, quickly filled with tension as the judge prepared to deliver the ruling. As Rick stood there, his usual confident demeanor replaced by an aura of nervous anticipation, no one could have predicted what was about to transpire. The words that followed seemed to cut through the air, their weight hanging over everyone in the room. In a split second, Rick's face shifted from shock to something far more concerning. Before anyone could fully react, he collapsed right in front of the judge, his legs giving way beneath him. What could have led to such an intense response? Was it the gravity of the verdict, or was there something deeper at play? The courtroom went silent as onlookers rushed to his side, the unfolding events leaving everyone in a state of disbelief. This unexpected moment has left many wondering what truly caused Rick's collapse and what consequences he now faces. For months, rumors had been swirling around Rick Harrison, the beloved star of Pawn Stars. Known for his straight-talking business sense and expertise in rare artifacts, Harrison had become a household name. But recently, whispers of legal trouble began to surface, leaving fans and followers shocked. The once steady and charismatic figure who entertained millions with his down-to-earth personality and vast knowledge of history was now the center of a media storm. The rumors began quietly. It was first reported that Harrison was under investigation for financial mismanagement. Some claimed that his famous gold and silver pawn shop had become the center of a larger investigation into money laundering and tax evasion. According to the speculation, some of the valuable items passing through the pawn shop had questionable origins. Accusations arose that Harrison had knowingly facilitated the sale of stolen or illegally obtained artifacts, a serious charge that no one expected to be associated with the popular TV star. The idea that Harrison might have been involved in such activities seemed impossible to many, given his public persona as a businessman who prided himself on integrity. As the rumors grew louder, more details started to emerge. It was said that federal investigators were looking into the pawn shop's financial records, particularly transactions involving high-value items. Experts claimed that Harrison's shop might have been used as a front for laundering money through illegal artifact sales. The speculation reached new heights when it was reported that some of Harrison's longtime business associates had been subpoenaed, and former employees were coming forward with claims of financial misconduct. Fans, who had long admired Rick for his tough yet fair approach to business, were left bewildered. How could this be happening? Was the man they'd seen for years on television really involved in something so serious? The news was difficult to digest, and the media jumped on it. In no time, the rumors about Harrison's legal troubles became headlines. What had once been a simple story about a businessman facing legal trouble quickly morphed into something far more serious: speculation about his potential imprisonment. People began to ask, what would happen to Pawn Stars? Would Rick Harrison, the face of the show, be sent to prison? Fans and media outlets were in a frenzy trying to piece together the truth. What was going on behind the scenes at the gold and silver pawn shop? How could Rick, a man who had built his career on his knowledge and trustworthiness, end up in a situation like this? As the rumors gained momentum, the once clear-cut image of Rick Harrison began to crack, leaving fans questioning the man they thought they knew. It was an ordinary morning when the news broke. Rick Harrison, the longtime star of Pawn Stars, had been arrested. The world of reality TV and the pawn business was rocked. Harrison, the man who had spent years entertaining millions with his sharp business acumen and encyclopedic knowledge of rare artifacts, was suddenly at the center of a criminal investigation. The rumors had escalated, and the truth was more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. The arrest came after months of speculation, which had slowly built up a serious legal case against Harrison. The allegations? Money laundering, tax evasion, and the handling of stolen or illegally acquired goods. For someone who had built a reputation as a straightforward businessman, these accusations seemed almost impossible to believe. But there was no denying it. Harrison was facing serious charges. The pawn shop that had made him famous, the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas, was now under a microscope. What had seemed like a thriving family business had now turned into the focal point of a federal investigation. The day Harrison was arrested, a team of federal agents arrived at his home early in the morning. The operation was swift and calculated, with agents confiscating documents, computers, and various records from both his home and the pawn shop. As news of the arrest spread, fans and critics alike were left in disbelief. How could this have happened to Rick Harrison? What did it mean for Pawn Stars? More importantly, what was the truth behind the charges? The courtroom drama that followed was just as intense as the arrest. Harrison's first court appearance was highly publicized, with reporters flocking to capture every moment. As he entered the courtroom, he looked composed, but his body language betrayed the stress and weight of the situation. The courtroom, usually filled with routine legal proceedings, was now a theater of suspense. The charges against Harrison were serious, and the judge was known for being tough. The courtroom was tense, with each word spoken carrying more weight than the last. Harrison's defense team was quick to respond. They argued that the charges were based on misunderstandings and that the prosecution was overblowing the case. They maintained that Harrison's pawn shop had always operated within the law, and that the accusations of money laundering and handling stolen goods were unfounded. Harrison, they said, was a businessman who prided himself on being fair and honest, and the legal troubles he was facing were the result of a few bad actors trying to undermine his reputation. But the prosecution was relentless. They had compiled what appeared to be overwhelming evidence, including financial records and testimonies from former employees. The investigation had started with a whistleblower, someone who had worked closely with Harrison, who had raised concerns about the way certain transactions were handled. According to the prosecution, Harrison had knowingly participated in illegal activities, including undervaluing items to avoid taxes and selling stolen goods through his pawnshop. The media quickly seized on the story. Every day brought new updates on the case, each one adding fuel to the fire. Social media exploded with opinions, with some fans defending Harrison, while others believed that he should face the consequences if the charges were true. There were theories about what had really happened, and some fans even speculated that the entire case was a conspiracy to take down Harrison and his successful business. Others, however, felt betrayed by someone they had once looked up to. As the trial continued, more witnesses came forward, some of them former employees of the pawn shop. Their testimonies painted a picture of a business that wasn't as above board as it appeared on television. Allegations of secret financial dealings, hidden accounts, and questionable practices were all brought into the spotlight. Harrison's legal team fought back fiercely, but the tide seemed to be turning in favor of the prosecution. Throughout the trial, Harrison remained mostly silent, choosing not to speak publicly about the case. His supporters were left in the dark, waiting for some kind of statement or indication that he would address the allegations. It wasn't until a few days into the trial that Harrison's lawyer finally spoke out, claiming that the evidence was being misinterpreted and that Harrison would eventually be vindicated. But the media had already made up its mind, and the public's perception was shifting. The most dramatic moment in the courtroom came when the prosecution presented what they called the smoking gun. A set of financial documents showed that several high-value items had been sold under suspicious circumstances. The prosecution claimed that these items had been knowingly purchased by Harrison from dubious sources and sold through the pawn shop for substantial profits. The evidence seemed damning, and for a moment, it looked like Harrison's fate was sealed. Harrison's defense team fought back hard, claiming that the documents were either fabricated or misunderstood. They argued that Harrison had no knowledge of any illegal activities and that any discrepancies in the records were the result of mistakes or sloppy bookkeeping. But, as the trial wore on, it became clear that the evidence against Harrison was mounting. The courtroom atmosphere was tense as the verdict drew near. Fans of Harrison were on edge, praying that their beloved TV star wouldn't face a lengthy prison sentence. The media was already speculating about what would happen next. Would he be convicted? Could his career survive this scandal? And, perhaps most importantly, would Pawn Stars continue without its charismatic host? Finally, after weeks of legal drama, the judge delivered his verdict. The courtroom was silent as he read the charges and the sentencing recommendations. Harrison's supporters held their breath, hoping for a lenient outcome. The verdict would determine not only his fate, but the future of his business, his career, and his legacy. Would the man who had become a household name through his sharp business sense and keen knowledge of history be able to redeem himself? Or would this legal battle mark the end of his career as a TV personality and entrepreneur? Only time would tell. The moment the news broke about Rick Harrison's legal troubles, the ripple effects were felt deeply by his family. For years, Rick had been the face of Pawn Stars, a show that not only made him a household name, but also built his family's legacy in the world of business. His wife, his children, and even his extended family had been a part of the show's success. They had been by his side through the highs, supporting him during his rise to fame. But now, they were faced with a completely different kind of challenge. one that no one had ever anticipated. Rick's wife, Deanna, was the first to react. Known for being supportive and standing by Rick's side through thick and thin, she was devastated when the legal troubles started to unfold. She had always been a private person, someone who stayed out of the spotlight and focused on her family. But now she was thrust into the public eye, forced to confront the rumors and accusations that were swirling around her husband. When the arrest happened, she was there, alongside Rick, as their world came crashing down. In the days following the arrest, Deanna remained by Rick's side, but she was visibly shaken. She had seen her husband's struggles in the past, but nothing had ever been this severe. As a supportive partner, she had been a part of the team that built the pawn shop and the Pawn Stars empire, but now, it was unclear whether their legacy would survive this scandal. When reporters began camping outside their home, Deanna had no choice but to address the situation in public. With her head held high, she told the media that she believed in Rick's innocence and that the family would stand strong together. Despite her composed demeanor, it was clear that she was fighting an internal battle. Rick's children, Corey and Adam, were equally shaken by the news. Corey, who had been working alongside his father for years and even appeared on Pawn Stars, found himself in a position that he had never imagined. Corey had been groomed to take over the family business, and as the eldest son, he had always been the one to step up when things got tough. But now the pressure was on him to not only defend his father's reputation, but also to keep the pawn shop running amidst the chaos. The day of the trial was especially difficult for Corey. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and even some fans. It felt like a spectacle more than a legal proceeding, and Corey could feel the weight of it all. His father had always been his mentor, someone he looked up to, and now he was sitting in the courtroom facing serious charges. Corey knew that this trial could either make or break their family's business, and it weighed heavily on him. Adam, Rick's younger son, took a different approach. He was less involved in the pawn business, choosing to follow his own path in life. Still, the news of his father's legal troubles hit him hard. Adam had always admired Rick's business savvy, and seeing his father, the man who had built an empire from nothing, in such a vulnerable position was deeply unsettling. Adam, too, stood by Rick during the proceedings, offering quiet support when it was most needed. But even Adam knew that their family's world was changing in ways they never could have predicted. For Rick's parents, the situation was even more heartbreaking. His father, the old man, had passed away a few years earlier, and while Rick had continued to honor his father's memory, there was now an unspoken feeling of loss. If his father had still been alive, he would have been right there beside Rick, offering his wisdom and support. But now Rick was facing this challenge alone, with only the love and support of his immediate family to help him through it. Rick's extended family, including his cousins, aunts, and uncles, also felt the impact of the scandal. While not all of them were as involved in the pawn business, they had all been part of the larger family dynamic that had grown up around the show. Many had supported Rick throughout his journey to fame and were proud of the success he had achieved. But now, they too were left wondering how this would all unfold. Could Rick overcome this? Would the family business survive? The media frenzy only added to the stress. As the trial continued, reporters camped outside the Harrison family home, eager for any scraps of information they could get. The tabloids ran sensationalized headlines, with each new development becoming more exaggerated than the last. Rick's family found themselves being bombarded with questions from reporters, well-wishers, and even critics. They were forced to face the situation head-on, even though none of them had ever imagined that it would come to this. At times, the family struggled to find a sense of normalcy. Corey, in particular, was caught in the middle. He had a business to run, but his father's arrest loomed over everything. He had to make decisions about the future of the pawn shop, knowing that the reputation of the family business was now on the line. Adam, who had distanced himself from the pawn world, found himself questioning everything he had known about his father's career and the legacy that was now in jeopardy. But through it all, the Harrison family remained united. Despite the media's attempts to divide them, they knew that their strength came from staying together. They leaned on each other, offering emotional support and solidarity in the face of overwhelming public scrutiny. They also found comfort in knowing that, at the end of the day, their bond as a family was stronger than anything that could come their way. As the days turned into weeks, the media's coverage only intensified. But behind the headlines and the gossip, the Harrison family held firm in their belief that Rick was innocent. They stood by his side, each member in their own way, offering support, love, and a sense of hope that they could weather this storm together. Rick, for his part, remained mostly quiet during the trial, his legal team handling the public statements. He knew that the stakes were high, and every word he said could be scrutinized. He relied on his family, knowing that they had his back no matter what. His family's unwavering support gave him the strength to keep going, even when the weight of the situation seemed unbearable. In the end, the trial came to a close, and the family waited anxiously for the verdict. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. No matter what the outcome, the Harrison family would face it together. They had been through ups and downs before, but this was different. This was a challenge that would test the very core of their unity and their belief in each other. But through it all, they held strong, knowing that their love for one another was unbreakable. The news of Rick Harrison's legal troubles and arrest shocked the world. Fans who had followed his journey on Pawn Stars for over a decade couldn't believe what they were hearing. The popular show, which had brought the history of rare artifacts and fascinating negotiations into millions of homes, suddenly found itself at the center of a media storm. The pawn shop, once known for its quirky charm and educational value, now seemed to be wrapped in scandal. The media seized on the story with a vengeance, and the reactions from fans were as divided as they were passionate. In the beginning, the media response was swift, with news outlets reporting every detail of Rick's arrest. The first few days were filled with speculations about the charges, the circumstances surrounding the investigation, and the possibility of a legal battle. It was a moment of intense uncertainty, with the public trying to make sense of the situation. Was this just a minor mistake? Or was there something much more serious lurking beneath the surface? The media didn't waste any time capitalizing on the mystery, flooding TV screens, social media, and print publications with speculative stories. Social media, in particular, exploded with opinions. Some fans couldn't believe the accusations against Rick, feeling betrayed by the man they had come to know as the face of Pawn Stars. For years, Rick had been seen as a no-nonsense businessman with a deep knowledge of history, and the idea that he could be involved in criminal activity seemed impossible to many. Comments flooded Twitter and Facebook, with loyal fans defending him, insisting that the charges were exaggerated or even fabricated. They pointed to Rick's history of helping people and his commitment to his family and business. For them, he was a beloved figure who had built something from the ground up. They couldn't fathom that someone they admired could be accused of such serious offenses. On the other hand, there were fans who felt disillusioned by the news. They had watched Pawn Stars for years, and to them, Rick had become an iconic figure. But now, with the legal battle playing out in public, many began to question whether they had been wrong about him. Some speculated that the show, with its mix of business and entertainment, might have obscured the truth behind the scenes. Was the charming TV personality the same person behind closed doors? Could his business dealings really have involved illegal activities? The rumors about money laundering, fraud, and other illicit practices only fueled the sense of confusion and distrust. The media's role in all of this was undeniable. As the story unfolded, reporters began digging deeper into Rick's past, trying to uncover any hints of misconduct or negligence that could have led to his arrest. They scrutinized his business practices, his dealings with suppliers, and his personal life, trying to find something that would explain how he had gotten into trouble. Every day, new angles of the story emerged. From questioning his business decisions to digging into his personal relationships, it seemed like no stone was left unturned. As the trial moved forward, the media coverage only intensified. The courtroom drama played out in real time, with reporters present to cover every moment. The proceedings became a spectacle, with cameras capturing Rick's every move. For the media, it was an opportunity to cover a high-profile legal case involving a beloved public figure. But for fans, it was a painful reminder of the possible collapse of everything Rick had worked for. In the midst of this, some media outlets took a more sympathetic stance. They focused on Rick's long history in the pawn business, his rise from humble beginnings, and his success on Pawn Stars. They pointed out that everyone makes mistakes, and that Rick deserved the chance to defend himself in court without being immediately condemned. These outlets highlighted the testimony of loyal clients who praised Rick for his work, telling stories of how he had helped them turn their lives around or given them valuable advice. They argued that the charges against him should not overshadow the good he had done over the years. Despite this more supportive angle, the backlash from other segments of the media was relentless. Tabloids and sensationalist outlets seemed to have a field day with the scandal, posting salacious headlines and feeding into the public's desire for drama. They focused on every detail of Rick's arrest, scrutinizing the legal documents, the charges, and the way the case was unfolding. The public, already in shock, was fed a steady stream of information, much of it focused on the most scandalous aspects of the case.